Hello, welcome to my little trip down road testing memory lane. Thank you very much for your comments and questions. It's another Q&A video today. I've been on my travels. The last few weeks have been busy with my MCN road tester hat on. I've been to Calafat in Spain, kind of south of Barcelona, on a little racetrack near the sea. Nice little track as well, to test the Kawasaki ZX4RR. So that was a one-day track only test. Then we went on to another test in Barcelona, which was for the Livewire S2 Del Mar, which is kind of the polar opposite to the Kawasaki. It's instead of a lightweight four-cylinder Revy super sport bike, this is a slightly heavier weight electric bike in a kind of a roadster style. And we rode around the streets of Barcelona and up in the kind of the foothills just outside Barcelona for a whole day. And then we went to Malaga to ride the eagerly anticipated BMW R1300 GS. So that was a two-day launch where we got to ride the bike for a whole day on the road, and then we got to ride off-road as well in an enduro park and some off-road riding as well, which was on a slightly modified GS with some of the special parts that you can get out of the options list, knobblier tyres, slightly different suspension, that kind of thing. You can read all about those tests and what those bikes are like in MCN, on the MCN app, on MCN videos. They're also going to be in Ride Magazine and Bike Magazine. So I won't give away what those bikes are like to ride, but I just thought I would mention the whole launch thing because, you know, there's a lot of negative things said about launches. You know, people's perception that the journalists go along there for a big jolly, all expenses paid, get drunk in the bar, ride some bikes around, abuse them and come back home. I mean, for me, that's definitely not the case. I think launches are very, very important. A launch is a place for a manufacturer to show off their bike and basically give you as much information as they can in terms of, you know, what makes it tick, what it's like to ride, all those kind of things, because it's the manufacturer's only chance really to communicate to the world what their new model's like. Yes, there's the information out there online, but it's hard to really kind of disseminate that unless you're really there with the bike. And of course, after the event, the bikes are out in the wild and anyone can go and ride them. But you're not speaking to the people that made the bikes, you're not really riding them to the full. And I know when we do launches, you know, not everyone rides in Spain, not everyone rides around racetracks all day, but we also follow on from these launch tests and do more real world tests on our MCN 250 route and kind of, you know, general road riding in the UK. So to kind of highlight those points really, so the ZX4RR launch, we got a whole day on the track with slightly stickier tyres than standard, and we were really able to feel our way into that bike. You know, if you were just to ride that bike on the road, you really wouldn't be able to reach the kind of the edges of its performance envelope really, and really taste its good stuff. And we were able to do that on a very safe, controlled track launch. And it was good fun as well, of course. I wouldn't be doing this otherwise. The same goes with the Livewire. We ended up spending a lot of time with the engineers. And one of the surprising things with the Livewire engineers, obviously Livewire are part of Harley, those engineers are kind of as far removed as you would think an engineer for an electric bike would be, or Harley Davidson would be, you know, maybe slightly fuddy-duddy, slightly kind of out there. But you know, a lot of those engineers are just petrol heads, ironically. One of the ones I was speaking to races an R6 in America, which is about as far from an electric bike as you could possibly get. Another one loves his off-road riding, races supermoto. So that was really interesting. That's something you wouldn't get away from a launch scenario. You know, I see it on MCN all the time, all the comments. People have got very kind of preconceived ideas of what bikes are like. And if it doesn't match with what you're saying, doesn't match with their perception of the bike, then you'll get a lot of negative comments. And then finally with the BMW, that BMW has got so much new stuff on it. You could write a book on what it's got, and then you could write another book about why it's got it. I found myself having lunch with just me and a BMW engineer, one of the top engineers who actually designed the GS, and he was telling me all this stuff about the bike, of how it evolved, that you wouldn't find in any press kit, you wouldn't find in, you know, any information that BMW put out. It was just fascinating. I mean, just for example, one of the things that BMW's got variable spring rate, as well as variable damping with its semi-active suspension setup. And he was saying, and it also has got a ride height device. The bike drops by 30 mil when it comes to a stop if you're in one of the lower riding modes. And he was saying you just couldn't do that with conventional forks. It needs its telelever front to be able to do that. You know, a lot of bikes got ride height devices on the back, but not the front. So, you know, little snippets like that are really, really interesting when you're going for a launch. And when you're there as a journalist, there's a massive fact-finding mission to be able to create your content for video and print and all the rest of it. You know, it's all those little nuances and all those little details that really colour the story. So, you know, launches are, you know, when you've done a lot of them, when you've travelled 100 times to a launch in a year, you would rather a bike be delivered to your door than you have to go all the way to Spain to ride it, which might sound odd, but that's the truth. But it's really important, I think, for us to be on launches, just because of what we learn and how we get to test the bikes. Anyway, that's by the by. Let's start on with the first question. And this is from a young man or young lady whose name I'm not able to pronounce, so I do apologise, but you can see it at the bottom of the screen. So, question: I used to ride a Yamaha MT-09 SP and I want to have much more fun, so I'm looking for an ultimate hooligan wheelie machine. Can you recommend me which is the best for me? 1290 Super Duke R KTM, Yamaha MT-10 or Ducati Hyper Motard? Or do you have other preferences? Please give me some advice, thanks. Well, thanks for asking. Well, so I guess you want to do skids and wheelies and stoppies. But I'd say the bike you've already got ticks those boxes. The Yamaha MT-09 SP is an amazing wheelie bike. Turn the ABS off and it does big skids. It's a really nice size of bike, really. And, you know, one thing I'll say is those middleweight nakeds are probably the most fun of all the categories, while still being able to be used as a useful motorbike. So, you know, an MT-09 SP, as you know, you can do a lot on it. You can tour on it, you could do track days on it, you can commute on it, and you can have fun. Within that class, I would probably say the most fun of all the middleweight nakeds would be the KTM 890 Duke R. I mean, that is a bonkers bike. So maybe you could think about that if you wanted something similar. But then if you go into super naked territory, super nakeds are basically naked super bikes. They're naked track bikes that are hideously fast and superb handling for the track. But the offshoot of that is that they are bonkers as well. So they'll pull massive wheelies, they do big skids and stoppies and all the rest of it. But the problem with that is that the good stuff all happens at very high speed. You know, even if you're one of these people that could do a walking pace wheelie, then this doesn't really count. But, you know, if you want to do power wheelies on a Super Duke or an MT-10, you're going to be going really fast by the time the front wheel lands. So I would kind of, you know, if you want a hooligan bike, I would kind of come back a little bit. So I'd go for the middleweight naked, or the Hypermotard. Like you say, I think the Hypermotard is the closest to a proper hooligan bike while being kind of useful. The Hypermotard's still fun in small doses and a real pain for the rest of the time. It's very single-minded, but in terms of having, you know, that ultimate distilled hooligan skids and wheelies fun, that's a really good choice. But don't expect to be riding that for a long time, you know, in a nice kind of calm way. You know, the seats are, there's no wind protection. All it wants to do is play. And if that's what you want, then that bike's going to be perfect. The other bikes that spring to mind would maybe be a Duke 690 single cylinder, or the offshoots like a Husqvarna Svartpillen or Vitpillen, something like that. They're really, really good fun. So yeah, for the ultimate in fun, if you're not worried about practicality, Hypermotard, definitely. But I would say that if you want to be a hooligan on the super naked, you might run into trouble before too long. But thanks very much for your question. Next, this is Mario VX1LZ. Hello Neezy, hello. Loving the content. Just recently got back into riding after a 10-year gap, and I've bought myself a 1992 Trident 900, and was wondering how important it is to rev-match, blipping the throttle on downshift. Well, so rev-matching, blipping the throttle on the downshift, the reason that's a good idea is because if you're slowing down, coming down through the gears, every time you let the clutch back out in between gear changes, you're going to be experiencing engine braking. If you're going relatively slowly, or you're slowing down at quite a gentle rate, you don't need to worry about blipping the throttle or anything like that. You can let the clutch out in between gears, and the bike will still remain quite stable, and you won't suffer the effects of engine braking too much. There's a reason why things like slipper clutches have been invented, which kind of slip the clutch for you on the way down through the gears, which takes the sting out of the engine braking. You've got auto blippers, which blip the throttle for you automatically on newer bikes, some newer bikes. You've got some bikes with electronic engine braking control, where the throttle butterflies in the throttle bodies open to take out some of the compression of the engine to help you go smoother down through the gears. All of those things are designed really to, at normal speed, to make slowing down a lot more smooth. Or at high speed, engine braking, excessive engine braking can run you into trouble because it can lock the back wheel up. So, you know, especially on track, if you're hammering down the gears and braking hard into a slow corner, you need to be able to blip the throttle or have a slipper clutch or some kind of device that's going to take the engine braking out. You know, some bikes have got a lot of engine braking, you know, big single, big twin. Some bikes have got hardly any, a two-stroke, for example. I would say your Triumph 900 has probably got a fair amount of engine braking. So I would learn how to rev match, given that it's not going to have any fancy electronics on that bike. So it's a case of, as you're coming down through the gears, just before you let the clutch back out in between gears, is to blip the throttle, which is a bit of an art because you're braking at the same time as well. So you've kind of got to learn to be able to turn the throttle and brake at the same time. There's tons of videos out there for rev matching and blipping the throttle, so you know, check them out. But I think it's a very useful skill just to make your riding smoother and safer. But great question. Next is Jamchester Boozle. Great name. Hello. Just on my first track day, using my Street Triple 675R, obviously a great bike. However, as good as it is, and even though it's my first track day, I already felt like it was slow on the straights. I'm tempted to get something bigger, but not sure if I'm experienced enough for a super bike. The obvious choice is a GSX-R 750, great bike, which I'll probably end up getting. Track day was an Anglesey circuit, which is absolutely brilliant, very enjoyable. Thanks Neezy for all the track day tips. They added so much to my day. Thank you very much. Well, I would say somewhere like Anglesey, I think you've probably got the perfect bike. I'm not sure if a bigger bike would be any faster down the straights, because there aren't really many big straights. I think it's a question of, you know, really getting to grips with what that Triumph can do to be able to come out the corners faster. You know, a smaller engine bike like that, a 3-cylinder triple, you need to generate corner speed and carry momentum through the corners and come out onto the straights. I don't think, even when I was racing, I've raced at Anglesey a lot of times, done quite well there. The lap times between 600s and 1000s aren't that different. Obviously the two types of bike do their lap time in different ways. The 1000s are slower in the corners and faster down the straights, and the smaller bikes carry momentum. So definitely the GSXR 750 is going to sort of give you your cake and eat it. You're going to have more straight line speed. You can ride it like a 600 because it's basically got a 600 chassis. It revs like a 600. It gives you the excitement of a 600. It's not too powerful. So that is a really, really good step. But I would still say the 675R, which is the one with Öhlins, is a fantastic bike. So I know that the James Whittam School do a lot of Anglesey track days and instruction. So, you know, maybe you could get yourself on one of those just to squeeze a little bit more out of the bike you've got for now, and kind of teach you the art of getting through a track corner fast, because, you know, riding on track's very different to the road. You've got to do things in a certain way. Some of the things seem counterintuitive compared to the road. But, you know, I'd say stage one, before you spend a lot of money on a new bike, get a little bit of instruction on that bike. And if you could do it at Anglesey, all the better. And then stage two, get a GSXR 750. Yeah, I wouldn't jump to a super bike straight away, because if you don't gel with a super bike straight away, or try and ride it like a smaller bike with lots of corner speed, you end up banging your head against the brick wall with it, and they're never that nice to ride until you figured it out. But I would say at the beginning of your track day journey, go for something smaller and easier to ride, and you'll have a great time. You'll have to let me know how you get on. Thank you very much. Next is from Alan M. Clark 4664. Hello, Alan. Great content, sir. Thank you. Question from a seasoned gent relatively new to track riding. Riding a 2020 GSXR 600, semi-dialed in for track street riding. One of my issues is riding on the rumble strips and my extreme lack of confidence. Quite scary for me anyway, here on my Southern Californian racetracks. Any advice for a 55-year-old novice? Well, thanks for your question. Well, number one, I'm very jealous that you're riding Southern Californian racetracks. I mean, how cool does that sound? You're very, very lucky. Well, number one, I would say don't worry about riding on rumble strips. You know, unless you're trying to find an extra tenth in lap time around a circuit, you don't need to go onto them really. Having said that, there are some circuits that really lend themselves to riding on the curbs, generally smooth curbs. So places, you know, Donington in the UK has got lots of nice smooth curbs that you can run onto. Jerez in Spain is probably one of the best tracks when it comes to riding on the curbs. You ride on the curb on the entry to the corner. You put your knee over the curb on the inside. The curbs are massive, and then you can ride to the curb on the edge on most of the corners, which actually makes the track easy to ride because it's like playing dot to dot. Some of the corners you can even run over the curb, the inside curb, with your wheel. Generally, you know, unless you've got somewhere like Jerez, I'd just stay away from the curbs, because you can never really know how grippy they are. You get some really grippy curbs. Some have got special paint on them that you can ride over in the rain. I know we went to Knockhill about a decade ago when they'd first, maybe longer, modified the track so you could ride it the other way, anti-clockwise as well as clockwise. And I remember turning up a day before the race, and we went out in the circuit manager's car in the wet, and he stopped at the chicane at the top of the hill, and he basically got us out of the car and said, look, the curb is grippier than the tarmac, so in the wet you want to run over the curb for extra grip. But I could never get my head around that. I'd never quite trust it, because generally curbs are slippery in the wet. The water doesn't dissipate because you've got a painted surface, it doesn't go through the cracks, so it just sits on top of the curb and it can be like ice. The same goes for any other types of curbs. Curbs can be dusty, curbs can be rippled, like you say, the rumble strips. I'm not sure if you mean the rumble strips are rippled, but generally stay away from them. And also you want to be hitting them when you're more or less upright, you know, so you need to make sure your line out of the corner is such where by the time you get to the curb, the bike's completely upright, rather than hitting the curb with the bike too leant over, you know. And to get to that point starts a long way on the corner entry, which, you know, I've spoken about before, with off throttle turning, being patient in the middle of the corner, using the throttle to get to the edge of the track, all those kind of things. So if I had one piece of advice though, having said all of that, is just don't bother with the curbs. It's not really going to make you a lot faster, but if you do get the hang of it, it does feel nice. But let me know how you get on. Thank you very much. And finally, this is from Orange Generator. Thanks for your question. Really enjoying your videos. They help me feel positive about one of my favourite hobbies and passions, which is motorcycling, as I can get quite negative and depressed about, well, everything. Anyway, your energy and passion helps me, so thank you very much. Well, thank you for your question. Yeah, I suppose, you know, a lot's being spoken about, you know, getting down and depressed nowadays, which is really a really good thing. Lots of people suffer from depression. A lot of people can experience this kind of black wave of depression that they're kind of will drown in for quite a while before eventually coming up for air. And it can affect people who would appear to be really happy and successful on the outside. So, you know, it's something which we talk about more, which is a really good thing. So the first thing, Mr. Orange Generator, is the very fact that you've talked about it here is a very positive thing. So thanks very much for your comment. And I think it is really good to talk about it. And I think, you know, if you do talk to people about it, it will make you feel better. I mean, I'm no expert. It's not a cure for it either, but, you know, it will help. And the other thing I'll say, which you're doing already as well, is that you've got a passion, which is motorcycling. And I think if you can throw yourself into your passion, you know, when it comes to bikes, whether it's watching the bike racing, whether it's reading magazines and newspapers, whether it's watching YouTube videos, riding the bike, you know, going to bike events, if you can absolutely immerse yourself in that world and have that amazing distraction, you know, that's gonna really help in day-to-day life as well. You know, you're gonna get dips, of course, but yeah, and it is a struggle. But you yeah, there's no magic pill, really. There's no one thing you can say to somebody. It's a very complex situation, but yeah, I think that talking about it is a really big step forward, and I'm really glad that you've written in. So yeah, I hope that helps, just talking about that to a person on a YouTube video. But yeah, I appreciate what you're going through. Anyway, that was that for now. That's the end of our Q&A videos. Thanks very much for watching, and we will see you again on the next video.